Thank you for joining our 6 tips for maximizing your Marketo Engage forms. My name is Maddie. I'm a consultant and a Marketo certified expert with JTF Marketing. I've been completely infatuated and in love with Marketo since I stumbled across it about 5 years ago, and I can't sing its praises more. Of course, it has its downsides as well, but I really love the smart ways in which it lets me do marketing better. Today, we'll cover why you should use global versus local forms, how you can capture more information by using progressive profiling, how you can continue journeys with advanced thank you pages, how you can use Prefill on non-Marketo pages, which I know a lot of you will have not been able to do so far, how you can use hidden parameters to capture UTMs, and why visibility rules can help you with data privacy. So let's jump straight in. Whilst Marketo forms can suck sometimes, and we all know they do, they're not inherently bad, and they can help us get smarter journeys. I started my Marketo journey, as I said, about 4 or 5 years ago, and I didn't really understand why I needed to use global forms versus local forms. So I spent every time I wanted to release a one-pager or a report or anything, I used to create a new form, and every single form had 7 fields, all required for one-pager. So I was asking things like name, email address, company name, industry, job title, country, and it was just not working because people weren't really interested in signing away their houses for my one-page report. So some of the problems I encountered was that my conversion rates were lower than I was expecting, and just people never went anywhere else after that. My forms weren't intelligent enough to keep that engagement. They didn't look particularly well. I didn't have a developer or any HTML or CSS knowledge to customize the way my forms looked. And at the end of the day, we didn't actually get the data we needed. So for my scoring model, I was scoring on job seniority, but I couldn't actually figure out what someone's seniority was based on their job title. So it was a bit of a fail. So what can you actually do to get a better experience? Well, first of all, you need to stop building stuff, and that's in red, so it's important. But the idea is that every time you're building a local form, you're wasting time. So you have to start thinking about the global forms more as a template of something that you can reuse over and over again. And sure, it might take a bit longer to figure out all your use cases, all the scenarios in which you're going to be using them, so that you can build a set of fields that you can reuse every single time, and you don't have to go back in to amend those. And it's also not something that you'll clone, like you will, when you're creating an email from a template, for example, you'll go in and say, create new email, sorry. In the case of the forms, you just have the forms available for you to pick every time the scenario asks for it. In JTF, for example, we have a set of global forms that we use depending on the type of communications that we're sending out. So we'll have some for events, for webinars, or for inquiries, for example. If we take webinars as a very relevant example for using global forms, we have one form that everyone sees, or well, almost everyone, unless you're seeing our welcome back script, which we'll talk about later. We're using the same form regardless of what webinar we're putting out there. And so you might be asking yourselves, well, Maddie, how do I actually know who signed up for what webinar? In order to figure out which page relates to which webinar, we're using the constraint in the fills out form trigger step. And depending on where that form actually lives, whether it's on a Marketo landing page or an external web page like your website, you can use either refer or web page as a constraint. And that's where you'll put in the URL where the form actually lives. And that allows you to understand very easily, and Marketo will be able to do that very easily for you, who registered for what webinar. And again, this saves you time by using the assets from Design Studio rather than a local form. Tip number 2, you can boost your conversion with progressive profiling. Well, first of all, what is progressive profiling? Well, let's say you want to find out who someone is, that is, you need their name, how to contact them, that's going to be your email address and your phone number, or their phone number, where they work and what they do, that's going to be the company name, their industry, their job title, seniority, or whatever other information you might need around that piece. If you're like me, 5 years ago, you have all the fields in one form, all required so that you know you've captured all that information. But progressive profiling allows you to capture that information over multiple interactions. So if you have a resource that you're providing them, they can fill in their email address and their name. Then the next time they come to your website, they want to register for a webinar, for example, you'll only be asking for their company name. And the time after that, you will capture the remaining information so that you have a full picture of that person. So when it comes to a handover to sales, you know it's going to be successful because you have all the data they need. Some considerations for this is to only try to keep the blank fields to 3 to 5. So again, don't try to gather too much information and try only to ask necessary data points. So don't try to go asking them for their birthdays if you're not actually going to use that with a killer promo. When it comes to thank you pages, you all know that it's usually pretty dull. You only have thank you for filling in the form, or thank you for downloading, or thank you for registering. But we don't want to lose that engagement. So we sometimes just throw content out there on that page in the hope that someone will click on it and carry on with their journey. But it rarely happens that way if the content isn't relevant. So what Marketo can do in this case is to actually provide you the ability to use data that you collected in the forms to cater the content to their particular audience. So for example, if you have a webinar, again, going back to that, if you have customers versus prospects joining that webinar, you could tailor the thank you pages with specific content for customers if you want them to fill in a survey or something, versus prospects where you might just give them some high-level detail about your company. This can happen with job titles, with prospects. You can use a lot of different segmentations to tailor that content. So Prefill on non-Marketo pages. Again, I've been looking into this for a while before I figured out you actually need a script, but you might have scoured the internet and the Marketo documentation, even the community. And usually the answer is that you can't use Prefill on non-Marketo pages, but it can work. Some of you may have seen this when you try to register for the webinar of welcome back and your name and register now. So it's a simple way to boost conversion because people won't feel like they're still having to give you all that information. It's just a simple click of a button. It makes the journey so easy for them that they don't feel that there is any work that they need to do. It is, however, a contentious point when it comes to privacy. But from a GDPR perspective, people who will receive your emails because you're inviting them to the webinar will likely have given you permission to collect data about them and to communicate with them. And at the end of the day, it's all about conversion rates. Just trying to boost what we have with the data we already have. Getting better lead attribution is also super important. And when it comes to that, marketers generally use UTMs that are appended to the links to track the success of their campaigns. So whether that's what channels you're using with your sources or your mediums or even campaigns. And we can use hidden fields in Marketo forms to capture automatically the parameters that we're using in those links. So for example, if you have one asset that you're promoting over LinkedIn and email, if someone fills in the form using the specific URL that you provided for the different channels, you'll be able to capture the information by using custom fields in Marketo. So if you don't know how to do that, get in touch with us later on and we can help you. But the idea is that you will be able to become much smarter in what channels you're using to promote, because you will have the reporting necessary to understand what works and what doesn't. The other thing you can do by capturing these UTMs, for example, is having a last touch campaign. So understanding what is the latest touch point that someone had with you. And you can use, in your Smart Campaign flow steps, you can use add choices to populate empty fields. So for example, if someone didn't, this was their last interaction, and it was never populated before, you can use the UTM information that you've already collected to populate this field. And lastly, you can use people performance reports to further drill down into the UTM details. And the last tip of the day is using visibility rules. The evolving landscape needs to be able to scale. So most of you might already know about visibility rules, but they can definitely help you to capture more information based on certain field selections. So if we take an event, for example, and I know most of us haven't organized any live events for a while now, but hopefully we'll start again soon. So you might want to figure out what someone's dietary requirements are. The visibility rules will help you to not show unnecessary fields to certain people. So if you're asking, do you have any dietary requirements? And someone says yes, then you can show the field where it's asking, what dietary requirements do you have? If they say no, then you just simply skip to the next question. You can also use visibility rules for data protection verbiage, for example. So if someone says they're from a country in Europe, then you can show GDPR specific information. If they're from the US, you can show US specific information. And that just allows you to make sure that you are covered for your particular circumstances. And that's pretty much on our quick run through our tips on forms. We do have a download available for you. You'll be sent this after the webinar. If you're in a rush and you really want to see this, you can go to jtfmarketing.co/resources. But the point is, we put this together to allow you to understand better about guiding content. So we all want to get better conversion. So you can discover when it's important to gate versus not gating your content and your assets, whether it's hard gating or soft gating, whether it's not gating it at all. How what can you do with your content to make sure that it gets to where it needs to go. So why JTF Marketing? Well, there's a team of us who are all certified experts, and we have some certified masters as well, architects. And we can help you to boost your conversion rates with refined and easy to use forms. Again, we can do smart things like prefill on non-Marketo forms and all sorts of creative ways to get the most use of your forms. You can learn how to apply global forms to your existing programs and your landing pages, and also how to use the form fill data to attribute leads more efficiently. Thank you very much for attending our session. If you have additional questions, please feel free to email them to us or fill in one of our contact us forms so you can see how they work. This is us, and thank you very much again.